NIST concludes that they found no evidence suggesting that the World Trade Center towers were brought down by controlled demolition. Where would people get an idea like that?
But before any debate about these demolition claims, the perpetrators must have loaded both towers with thousands of explosives without being detected. Would that even be possible? This is a key component of any demolition theory. There is only one way to really understand how a demolition works, and that is to watch one as it unfolds. On a college campus, we followed step by step the complex process of explosive prep and loading destined to claim a 9-story steel frame dormitory.
Before the blast team can do their job, which is actually attach explosives to the building, there's a general demolition contractor who prepares the building for the blaster to do his job.
Neighbors Demolition moves on to the site and knocks out the brick facade on the bottom 2 floors, creating a soft ground floor.
The first thing they did here was they cut away the walls and exposed the columns. A blaster or explosives cannot do anything without columns being exposed. You need to have access to them.
In the Twin Towers, the demolition team would have needed access to 47 inner core columns without being detected. Truthers believe that access existed.
Actually, they had all the access that they needed. All they had to do was get into the elevator shaft, and they would have access to the core columns and beams throughout the building. They might need a cover story, such as an elevator modernization, which it turns out was going on prior to 9/11.
The tower elevators were renovated in 2000. Even with this theoretical access, how could this large demolition team have worked in secret? The time it takes to plant these charges varies from structure to structure.
There'll be a lot of prep work for the World Trade Center. You see what it takes for a little 8-story building. We've been in here for the last couple of weeks. I mean, the columns on the World Trade Center is 10 times bigger than what we're cutting out here.
It is such a disruptive process. You're tearing down walls. You're exposing beams, and then you're preparing those beams. You can't just do that in a day. You can't do that overnight. You can't do that with a stealth team of ninjas. You can't do it.
Wouldn't need a whole lot more than 3 weeks. It'd probably take us 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, maybe even do something like that. You'd have to have at least 100 guys or so or more to get in there and get something like that ready.
The truthers feel they don't need to provide an answer for how the explosives were planted.
This is a very different kind of operation. A real investigation would provide some of these answers if we had subpoena power, which the 9/11 Commission did not have.
With the building ready, the demolition team prepares the various explosives on site. To cut steel beams, demolition teams use a shape charge.
This actually is a piece of copper that is part of a shape charge weapon. And what happens is you put a little explosive in each one of these little pockets, and you set off the charge, and this whole rim implodes, and you get a stream of liquid copper, and this jet of copper will cut through steel.
No matter what the exact shape of the charge, they all will react the same, cutting steel when detonated. Now, personnel clear, and the demolition team places copper-shaped charges on all 24 support columns.
Now, this is a linear shaped charge, and it's wired in with the dynamite. When it cuts, it'll cut this column right on this angle, and then this piece will be deflected and displaced in that direction. You have to do the math, but it's 400 grains to a foot, 7,000 grains to make a pound. So it's not really that much, but it's potent stuff. I mean, it'll just blow the snot out of that concrete.
After double-checking their explosives, the demolition team touches off the fuse. Buried in this pile of debris should be hard evidence pointing to implosion. Evidence that should have been found in the rubble of the World Trade Center. The search begins.
Here's a piece right here, you know, that blew away. Here's a whole rat's nest that's still tied into the building. You can't remove all of this stuff.
Richard Gage disagrees with Blanchard's conclusion.
It's a different kind of detonation. They would not leave detonator cords and devices as they do in traditional, more economical detonations. This is a very different kind of operation.
There's a lot of circumstantial claims, a lot of innuendo, a lot of whack-a-mole, which you explain one thing away and they mention something else, and it never ends. But the reality is, this far out, no one has been able to provide a single piece of evidence that those buildings were explosively demolished.
The truthers believe there may be an ulterior reason for the demolition experts' skepticism.
The firms that do controlled demolition of high-rises work for the most wealthy people in our federal government. They cannot possibly support the controlled demolition theory and maintain their clientele.
Projecting the manpower and time needed to place explosives in the 110-story towers exposes a major defect in the controlled demolition theory. The elevator upgrade referred to by truthers might have provided access to the core columns, but a large demolition team would still have needed to work in secret to break through the gypsum board walls and to cut through each column with an acetylene torch. The lack of any demolition evidence in the debris pile at Ground Zero also undermines this theory. But truthers believe the evidence, or lack of evidence, from our experiment points to the real source of the demolition.
Brent Blanchard also talks about that there's no detonator cord down in the debris piles. Well, we're talking about a very high-tech nanothermite, and its detonation mechanism is not even known by Brent Blanchard, much less us.
The technology that was used to bring down the World Trade Center high-rises was very sophisticated. High-tech nanothermite is beyond the technology used by those performing classic controlled demolitions in that industry. They don't know about it. They told us they don't know much about it.
Again, our tests don't change the conclusions made by either side.